The school bell echoed through the old limestone building as children poured. St. Anne's Primary School in Valletta, Malta. Their laughter bounced between the honey-coloured walls while teachers welcomed students into their classrooms. Only one child remained standing near the entrance. 8-year-old Ethan Borge stared at the ground, clutching a worn backpack whose zipper barely held together. His faded trousers were patched at both knees. His sneakers were different shades of white from years of use, and the sleeves of his oversized sweater hid hands roughened by chores no child should ever have to do. Mrs. Clairvella, Ethan's teacher, noticed him immediately. She had already sent 3 messages to his mother during the previous week. No reply. Another message yesterday. Still nothing. That morning Ethan had arrived nearly 30 minutes late again. "Ethan," she called, trying to stay calm. "This is becoming unacceptable." The boy lowered his head. "I'm sorry, miss. Sorry doesn't solve the problem." The other children quietly watched from inside the classroom. Mrs. Vella sighed. "You are one of the brightest students I have ever taught. But lately you come to school late. Your uniform is dirty, your homework is unfinished, and your mother ignores every message I send." Ethan remained silent. "If your mother doesn't come tomorrow, I'll have no choice but to speak with the principal." The little boy nodded without raising his eyes. The lesson continued, but Ethan hardly heard a word. When school ended, children rushed into the waiting arms of their parents. Ethan walked alone. Instead of taking the road toward his small neighborhood in Baumla, he turned toward the quiet streets leading to the Adolorata Cemetery. He stopped before a simple white marble grave. Fresh flowers no longer appeared there. No candles burned. Only the wind. The boy knelt on the cold stone pavement. "Mum." His voice trembled. "Please wake up." Tears rolled down his dusty cheeks. "My teacher is angry again." He swallowed hard. "She thinks you don't care." His tiny hands gripped the edge of the gravestone. "If you could just come tomorrow. Just once. She'll understand." Silence answered him. Only distant church bells echoed across the cemetery. Almost 10 years earlier, Isabella Borge had arrived in Malta with nothing more than a small travel bag and a letter containing the address of a distant acquaintance. She was only 17. Her parents had died within months of each other after a serious traffic accident near Syracuse, Sicily. With no close relatives willing to care for her, Isabella crossed the sea searching for work and a new beginning. Reality was harsher than she imagined. For weeks she slept in abandoned buildings near the harbor. Some nights she skipped meals entirely. She cleaned cafes whenever owners needed temporary help, washed dishes in restaurants, and accepted any work that paid enough to survive. One rainy afternoon, while carrying heavy grocery bags for an elderly customer, she caught the attention of Mrs. Eleanor Camilleri, a respected businesswoman known throughout Valletta for restoring historic properties. Eleanor noticed that despite her exhaustion, the young woman smiled politely and refused extra money she hadn't earned. Curious, Eleanor invited Isabella inside her townhouse for tea. By the end of their conversation, she knew the girl's entire story. "You remind me of myself," Eleanor admitted softly. "I also grew up with nothing." The next morning, Isabella was offered a full-time position helping maintain Eleanor's large family residence. For the first time in many months, she slept in a clean room. She ate warm meals every day, and she allowed herself to believe that life might finally be changing. For nearly 3 years, Isabella became an indispensable part of the Camilleri household. She wasn't simply a housekeeper. She organized every room with remarkable care, prepared traditional Maltese meals that even Eleanor's demanding husband praised, and somehow managed to brighten the atmosphere of the old townhouse with her quiet optimism. The elderly couple soon trusted her with everything from household accounts to caring for their treasured family heirlooms. Unlike many employers, Eleanor treated Isabella with dignity. She insisted the young woman eat dinner with the staff instead of alone in the basement room, and often reminded her that hard work deserved respect, no matter where a person came from. When an old limestone cottage in the town of Zeebrugge became vacant, Eleanor made an unexpected offer. "It isn't much, she said while handing Isabella the keys. My husband and I lived there when we were newly married. If you're willing to pay for it little by little, it's yours. Isabella could hardly believe her ears. Owning a home had always seemed like an impossible dream. She accepted with tears in her eyes. The monthly payments consumed almost everything she earned, leaving only enough for groceries and utilities, but she never complained. Every evening she carefully placed a few euros into a small tin box labelled "Future." She told herself that one day she would have enough savings to build a better life. Months turned into years. Slowly, the tiny cottage became a real home. She planted flowers outside the front door, repaired broken furniture with her own hands, and painted the faded shutters bright blue. For the first time since losing her parents, Isabella felt safe. She believed the worst chapter of her life had finally ended. She was wrong. That summer, Eleanor's younger son returned to Malta, after completing his business degree in London. His name was Nicholas Camilleri. Tall, charming, and confident, Nicholas attracted attention wherever he went. Friends admired him, strangers envied him, and he had grown accustomed to getting exactly what he wanted. The moment he met Isabella, he noticed her gentle smile and striking green eyes. At first, his visits to the kitchen seemed accidental. Then he found excuses to linger after dinner. Soon he began waiting for her in the courtyard after work. "You deserve better than cleaning someone else's house," he told her one evening. Isabella laughed nervously. "I'm grateful just to have work." "You deserve someone who sees how extraordinary you are." She blushed. No one had spoken to her that way before. Nicholas showered her with compliments, brought her books because she loved reading, and surprised her with small gifts from Valletta's boutiques. He listened when she spoke about her dreams, remembered every detail, and made her believe that their different backgrounds didn't matter. She had no reason to doubt him. She didn't know that Nicholas was already engaged to Vanessa Grech, the daughter of one of Malta's most influential political figures. The engagement had been arranged for years. To Nicholas, it was a business alliance. To Isabella, he never mentioned it. Weeks became months. The secret romance deepened. Late one evening, beneath the warm glow of streetlights overlooking the Grand Harbour, Nicholas promised her they would someday build a life together. She believed every word. Not long afterward, Isabella discovered she was expecting a baby. Her hands trembled as she stared at the doctor's report. Fear and joy collided inside her. The first person she chose to tell wasn't Nicholas. It was Eleanor. The older woman listened in stunned silence before quietly sitting beside her. "I wish things were different," Eleanor whispered. "What do you mean?" Eleanor hesitated. "My son is getting married in 6 weeks." The room suddenly felt unbearably small. Isabella stared at her in disbelief. "No." "I'm so sorry." The young woman's heart shattered. Everything Nicholas had promised had been a lie. Still, she wanted to hear the truth from him himself. She deserved at least that much. Isabella waited until evening before confronting Nicholas. She found him standing on the terrace overlooking the Grand Harbour, a glass of wine in his hand as the city lights reflected across the calm water. "We need to talk," she said quietly. He turned, smiling at first, but the expression disappeared the moment he saw the medical envelope in her hands. "I'm pregnant." For several long seconds, neither of them spoke. Nicholas looked away. Finally, he sighed. "You shouldn't have kept the baby." The words struck Isabella harder than any slap ever could. "What did you say?" He rubbed his forehead impatiently. "My life is already planned." "Our life," she corrected. "There is no our life, Isabella." She felt her knees weaken. "You told me you loved me." "I said many things." He spoke calmly, almost coldly, as though discussing a business contract rather than the future of their child. "My wedding is in a few weeks. Nothing is going to change that." "You promised." "I promised what you wanted to hear." The silence that followed was unbearable. When Isabella finally turned to leave, Nicholas grabbed her wrist. "You need to disappear." She slowly pulled her hand away. "I'm not hiding our child." "You don't understand how powerful Vanessa's family is." "I don't care." "You should." Later that night, Isabella woke to loud knocking at her front door. When she opened it, Nicholas stood outside alone. The smell of alcohol surrounded him. His calm expression from earlier had vanished. "You've embarrassed me enough," he snapped. "You came here to threaten me." "I came to warn you." He stepped inside without permission. "You'll sell this cottage." "No." "You'll move somewhere else." "No." His voice grew louder. "My mother practically gave you this place. Don't pretend you've earned everything." "I've paid every installment." "You think anyone will believe you over me?" Tears filled Isabella's eyes, but she refused to back away. "Our baby deserves a father." Nicholas laughed bitterly. "I don't have a child." "You do." He leaned closer. "If you stay in Malta, you'll regret it." For a brief moment, Isabella genuinely feared him. When he finally left, she locked every door and cried until sunrise. The following morning, she packed everything she owned into a borrowed delivery van. She didn't tell Eleanor where she was going, not because she blamed the older woman, but because she knew Nicholas would eventually ask his mother. She drove south, eventually settling in the quiet fishing village of Masaxlok, where almost no one knew her name. The little house she purchased was modest, just 2 bedrooms with peeling paint and a tiny garden, but it was enough. Most importantly, it was a place where her child could grow up without fear. Life had to begin again. She rented a small stall at the famous waterfront market, waking before dawn every morning to purchase fresh vegetables from local farmers. The work was exhausting. Some days she stood for 12 hours beneath the blazing Mediterranean sun. Other days heavy rain kept customers away. But Isabella refused to give up. Her determination soon earned the trust of local residents. People appreciated her honesty. If a customer accidentally overpaid, she always returned the extra coins. If an elderly neighbor couldn't carry heavy bags, she delivered them personally after work. Little by little, her vegetable stall became one of the busiest in the market. Then, on a warm spring morning, after a difficult labor that lasted nearly 18 hours, her son was born. She held the tiny baby against her chest and whispered through happy tears, "Your name is Ethan." At that moment, every sacrifice suddenly felt worthwhile. From the day Ethan came home, Isabella devoted every moment of her life to him. Her schedule became almost impossible. Before sunrise, she prepared vegetables for the market while Ethan still slept in a small wooden crib beside her bed. As soon as he woke, she wrapped him in a blanket and carried him to work. Customers often smiled as the cheerful little boy greeted everyone with a wave from behind the market stall. The fisherman knew him by name. The bakery owner always slipped him a warm bread roll. The flower vendor insisted on giving him a single daisy every Friday. Although money was still tight, Ethan never lacked love. When he was 3 years old, Isabella became close friends with a neighbor named Sophie Added, a kind-hearted woman who lived only 2 streets away. Sophie often watched Ethan whenever Isabella needed to travel to nearby villages to buy produce. Their friendship grew naturally. Sophie had always dreamed of opening her own cafe but never had enough savings. Isabella encouraged her, helped her paint the small storefront she hoped to rent someday, and often reminded her not to give up. A few months later, Sophie's boyfriend, Daniel Farrugia, entered the picture. Daniel worked at a local bank in Valletta. He appeared polite, well-dressed, and responsible. He spoke confidently about investments, mortgages, and financial planning, leaving everyone around him convinced he could be trusted. One evening, after dinner, Daniel said to Isabella, "You've built something impressive here." She smiled modestly. "I'm just trying to provide for Ethan." "You should also think about his future." "What do you mean?" "A savings account." He explained how regular deposits could grow over time and eventually pay for Ethan's university education. The idea immediately appealed to Isabella. She had never stopped worrying about what would happen if one day she could no longer work. Within a week, Daniel helped her open an account. At first, Isabella visited the bank herself, but as her business expanded, finding time became increasingly difficult. She now operated 3 market stalls in different parts of southern Malta. She hired 2 employees and purchased a small delivery van. Whenever she was too busy, Daniel offered to deposit the money for her. "Don't waste your mornings." Standing in line, he would say with a reassuring smile, I'll handle everything. Since he worked at the bank, and because he was Sophie's partner, Isabella never questioned him. She trusted him completely. Years passed. Every spare euro went into Ethan's future. She never bought expensive clothes. She rarely replaced worn-out furniture. While other business owners celebrated success with holidays abroad, Isabella continued living simply. Her greatest dream wasn't wealth. It was seeing Ethan receive opportunities she had never had. When Ethan turned 6, she made a decision that many people considered impossible. She enrolled him at St. Anne's Primary School in Valletta, one of the island's most respected private schools. The tuition fees were enormous. Several neighbors thought she was making a mistake. Public school is good enough, they told her. But Isabella believed education could change the course of a person's life. If he studies hard, she often whispered while watching him sleep, no one will ever be able to take his future away. Ethan quickly proved she had made the right choice. He loved reading. He solved mathematics problems far beyond his age. His teachers describe him as unusually curious and remarkably kind. Yet fitting in was another matter. Many classmates came from wealthy families. Their parents arrived in luxury cars. They wore designer uniforms and carried expensive school supplies. Some children quietly mocked Ethan because his mother sold vegetables at the market. He pretended not to notice. At home, he never mentioned it. He didn't want to give his mother another reason to worry. Fortunately, his class teacher, Mrs. Clairvella, recognized his exceptional potential. After speaking with the school administration, she successfully arranged a partial scholarship that reduced a significant portion of Ethan's tuition. When Isabella heard the news, tears filled her eyes. She thanked Mrs. Vella again and again. The financial relief allowed her to save even more for Ethan's future. For a brief time, life finally seemed peaceful. Neither of them could imagine how quickly everything was about to change. 6 months later, Isabella began suffering from severe headaches. At first, she ignored them. I'm just tired, she told Sophie. Running 3 market stalls while raising a child alone would exhaust anyone. But the pain grew worse. Some mornings she struggled to stand. Bright light made her dizzy. By afternoon, she could barely concentrate on simple calculations. Ethan noticed the change immediately. Mum, are you sick? Just a little headache, sweetheart. She forced a smile. Doctors ordered tests. Then more tests. Nothing explained her condition. Weeks passed. The headaches became unbearable. Eventually, Isabella was confined to bed, unable to work. Sophie took charge of the market stalls while Daniel managed the financial paperwork. Focus on getting better, he said. I'll handle the accounts. One afternoon, he arrived with several documents. These are temporary authorization forms, he explained smoothly. The suppliers need someone who can sign on your behalf while you're ill. Isabella barely had the strength to read. Trusting him completely, she signed. Ethan sat beside her bed holding her hand. When will you get better? He asked. She brushed his hair gently. Soon. But her voice lacked confidence. The decline. Within 2 months, Isabella had lost so much weight that even Ethan noticed. She could no longer walk without assistance. The once energetic woman who had built a business from nothing now spent her days staring at the ceiling, fighting waves of pain that medicine barely touched. One evening she called Ethan closer. Listen to me carefully, she whispered. The boy climbed onto the bed. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. Don't talk like that. No matter what happens, you must keep studying. Tears filled his eyes. Nothing will happen. Isabella hugged him tightly. It was the last time she had enough strength to hold him properly. The funeral. 3 days later, before dawn, Isabella Borge died. The doctors still could not explain why a healthy 30-year-old woman had deteriorated so rapidly. Sophie told Ethan that his mother had fallen into a deep sleep. The 8-year-old did not understand. At the funeral, he cried uncontrollably as the coffin was lowered into the ground. Mum, wake up. He shouted. Several mourners turned away, unable to watch. Daniel placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. She isn't suffering anymore, he said. Ethan only cried harder. Alone. A week after the funeral, Ethan woke to an unnaturally quiet house. Sophie, he called. No answer. He checked the kitchen. Empty. The living room. Empty. Most of the furniture was gone. Boxes had disappeared. Even the television was missing. On the kitchen table lay a single note. Dear Ethan, I've had to travel to another city for your mother's business. Please don't be angry with me. I'll be back in 1 month. Do not tell anyone that you're staying alone. If people find out, they will send you to an orphanage. Be brave. Ethan read the note 3 times. If Sophie was coming back, everything would be fine. He just had to wait. So he waited. The first month. He learned how to make toast. He ate canned food when he could find it. He wore the same clothes for days, because he wasn't sure how to use the washing machine properly. When the electricity bill arrived, he placed it on the table beside the others, assuming an adult would eventually pay it. No adult came. After 1 month, Sophie did not return. Neither did Daniel. The refrigerator became almost empty. The electricity was disconnected. A week later, the water was shut off as well. Ethan began filling plastic bottles from a public fountain several streets away. At night, he sat alone in the dark, waiting for the sound of a key turning in the lock. It never happened. School. Without anyone to wake him properly, Ethan started arriving late to school. Mrs. Vella grew increasingly frustrated. She had fought for his scholarship because she believed in him. Now his performance was slipping. One morning she noticed a strong odor coming from his clothes. Ethan, she said quietly after class, please ask your mother to wash your uniform. He nodded. The next day she sent another message home. No reply. Then another. Still no reply. When the school announced a science exhibition, every student was expected to present a project. Ethan submitted nothing. He had no money for materials. Mrs. Vella's disappointment finally turned into anger. You've let us all down, she said in front of the class. Tomorrow your mother must come to school. If she doesn't, we will have a very serious discussion with the principal. Ethan felt every pair of eyes on him. His throat tightened. He wanted to explain, but he was terrified. If he told the truth, they might take him away. So he said nothing. When the final bell rang, he grabbed his backpack and ran out of the classroom with tears streaming down his face. Instead of going home, he headed toward the cemetery. He had only one person left to ask for help. The afternoon sky over Malta was turning shades of gold as Ethan hurried through the narrow streets leading to the Adolorata Cemetery. His backpack bounced against his shoulders, but he never slowed down. He ran past rows of old limestone tombs until he reached the simple white gravestone that bore his mother's name. He dropped to his knees. Mum. His voice cracked. Please wake up. The cemetery was silent except for the wind moving through the cypress trees. The teacher is angry again. He wiped his tears with the sleeve of his worn sweater. She thinks you don't care about me. His small hands rested against the cold marble. Please, just come tomorrow. His crying grew louder. You've rested long enough. I can't do this alone. Nearby, the cemetery caretaker had been trimming flowers around another grave. At first, he thought the child was visiting with relatives. Then he realized the boy was completely alone. He quietly approached. Son. Ethan didn't respond. The caretaker knelt beside him. Where are your parents? The boy stared at the gravestone. My mum is here. And your father? I've never met him. The caretaker felt a chill. He gently asked another question. Who brought you here today? I walked. Who is waiting for you at home? Ethan answered without looking up. No one. The caretaker immediately stepped away and called the police. Less than 30 minutes later, officers from the Malta police force arrived at the cemetery. They spoke softly with Ethan before taking him to the local station. He never resisted. He simply held his backpack tightly and remained silent. When officers searched for emergency contacts, they discovered something deeply troubling. There was no legal guardian listed anywhere. No recent communication from Sophie. No indication that anyone had been caring for the child. Meanwhile, the school received a phone call informing them that one of their students had been found alone. At the cemetery, Mrs. Claire Vella froze. Without hesitation, she drove straight to the police station. The moment she saw Ethan sitting quietly in a chair with red, swollen eyes, guilt washed over her. She slowly walked toward him. "Ethan." The boy looked up. For the first time, she noticed how exhausted he truly looked. His face was pale. His clothes were not simply dirty, they had clearly not been washed for weeks. His shoes were beginning to come apart. Mrs. Vella knelt in front of him. "I'm so sorry. I thought your mother was ignoring my messages." Ethan whispered the truth he had been carrying alone for months. "My mum died." The room fell completely silent. "I didn't know. I didn't want them to take me away." Mrs. Vella gently wrapped her arms around him. The little boy finally stopped trying to be brave. He buried his face against her shoulder and cried harder than he ever had before. The words barely escaped her lips. "I thought." She couldn't finish the sentence. Tears filled her eyes. The story spread quickly. Within days, local newspapers reported how an 8-year-old child had secretly lived, alone for weeks after his mother's death. Television stations covered the case. People across Malta wanted to know how such a tragedy had gone unnoticed. The police launched a full investigation into Isabella Borg's business, finances, and sudden death. Detectives soon uncovered disturbing irregularities. Large amounts of money had disappeared from the savings account Isabella had opened for Ethan. Business ownership documents had been transferred shortly before her death. Authorization forms bearing her signature had granted Daniel complete control over her finances. At first, everything appeared legal, but forensic specialists noticed inconsistencies. The signatures had been obtained while Isabella was heavily medicated and barely conscious. Then toxicology experts made an even more shocking discovery. Samples preserved during Isabella's medical examinations contained traces of a rare poison administered repeatedly, in very small doses. Her illness had never been natural. Someone had been killing her slowly. She quietly removed him from managing the family's charitable of her estate into an educational trust for Ethan. "I cannot change the past," she told him one afternoon as they walked along the Valletta waterfront, "but I can help protect your future." Years passed. Ethan grew into an outstanding student, known not only for his intelligence, but also for his kindness toward anyone who felt left behind. He never forgot the days when he had gone to school hungry. He never forgot crying alone beside his mother's grave. And he never forgot the teacher who chose compassion over judgment when she finally learned the truth. Whenever people ask him why he wanted to study law, he always gave the same answer: because every child deserves someone willing to fight for them. Every year, on Isabella's birthday, Ethan visited the cemetery carrying fresh white lilies. He would clean the gravestone, place the flowers beside it, and quietly tell her about everything that had happened, the exams he had passed, the friends he had made, and the family that had finally found him. Before leaving, he always smiled and whispered the same words: "You kept your promise, Mum. You gave me a future." And this time, although the cemetery remained silent, Ethan no longer felt alone. The end.